Some horror films leave behind uneasy feelings because of what unfolds on screen, but others unsettle us for reasons far more obscure. These are the titles that drift through the genre like whispered rumors, films that were completed, released, and then quietly abandoned by the people who made them. No cheerful recollections, no behind-the-scenes specials, no cast reunions or anniversary celebrations, only a strange, persistent silence. Across decades of horror filmmaking, a handful of productions stand apart not because they failed, but because those involved seem determined not to revisit their experiences. When asked, actors offer restrained answers, directors shift the topic, and crew members go quiet, as though the memories carry a weight they don't wish to unpack. Documentation is missing, press material is scarce, and photographs that should exist simply don't. This absence becomes its own kind of presence, a shadow that hints at tensions, exhaustion, or events that were never meant to be public. There are no official explanations, but the silence itself speaks volumes. Tonight, we explore 15 films that sit in this eerie space, works surrounded not by scandal, but by avoidance, films whose creators stepped away and left behind only unanswered questions. For these titles, the most haunting part of their story isn't what was filmed, but everything that was never spoken about again. Fact 1. The Alien Factor, 1978. The Alien Factor remains one of regional horror's most intriguing enigmas, a film enthusiastically embraced by fans, yet seemingly avoided by many of its own creators. Director Don Dohler, known for documenting his projects thoroughly, left behind surprisingly little evidence from this shoot. The shortage is so striking that some historians believe the absence of materials was intentional, though no one has offered a definitive explanation. Accounts that circulate today suggest a production shaped by punishing conditions. Filming in the freezing cold of Maryland pushed cast and crew to their limits, especially those encased in bulky creature suits or performing stunts without the safety standards expected today. Long shooting days paired with limited resources reportedly created an atmosphere of fatigue and uncertainty that weighed heavily on the team. The cast, many of whom were local amateurs, contributed enthusiasm but sometimes struggled with the demands of the shoot. Miscommunication, delayed schedules, and on-the-fly adjustments formed the backdrop of a process that seems, in hindsight, to have taken a toll on everyone involved. What remains especially mysterious is the lack of archival material. No candid set photos, no extensive interviews, no behind-the-scenes footage, only the finished film and a scattering of anecdotes that never quite form a complete picture. Thus, The Alien Factor survives as both a cult classic and a cinematic riddle, a film whose monsters are well remembered but whose creation has been all but swallowed by silence. Fact 2. The Dark Secret of Harvest Home, 1978. Though The Dark Secret of Harvest Home captivated audiences with its portrayal of insular ritual and rural menace, its production history has been enveloped by a surprising hush. Many of the actors involved, including those with long, decorated careers, rarely speak of it. When they do, their responses are noticeably muted, tinged with an ambiguity that hints at lingering discomfort. Those with peripheral knowledge of the shoot describe long days spent in isolated countryside environments, where the eerie subject matter seemed to bleed into the real atmosphere around the cast and crew. Creative disagreements reportedly surfaced throughout the production, prompting sudden shifts in direction that left some performers unsure of the project's intended tone. The isolation, combined with the material itself, was said to wear on morale as filming progressed. The scarcity of documentation only deepens the film's enigmatic aura. Behind the scenes, images are nearly non-existent, and the promotional materials produced at the time provide little context for how the miniseries was made. Efforts to assemble retrospective commentary have consistently encountered refusals or silence. The result is a work shrouded not only in narrative mystery, but in the quiet withdrawal of those who brought it to life. People remember the story, yet the making of it feels intentionally left behind. Fact 3. The Appointment, 1981. The Appointment carries with it an uncanny stillness, a sense that the film was not just made, but quietly sealed away by those who participated in it. While it has earned admiration for its unsettling tone and its slow, creeping dread, the people behind it have remained noticeably reluctant to revisit their time on the production. Director Lindsay C. Vickers, in particular, has offered only the briefest comments over the years, never expanding on what transpired during the shoot. Attempts to piece together the film's history reveal a trail of missing threads. Production notes are incomplete, press material scarce, and first-hand accounts inconsistent or simply unavailable. Those who were present describe a set marked by emotional heaviness, long days in remote, mist-shrouded locations, creative disagreements that never fully resolved, and a sense that the film's somber mood seeped deeply into daily life on set. Even more curious is the absence of visual documentation. No verified behind-the-scenes images have surfaced, and no interviews from the time offer insight into the creative process. It is as if the production existed behind a curtain, visible only in its final form. The silence surrounding the appointment has become part of its identity, a film defined not just by what viewers see, but by the secrets its creators seem unwilling to revisit. Fact 4. Force of Darkness 1985. Force of Darkness is a film whose reputation is shaped less by its occult themes and more by the silence of the people who brought it to life. Though it fits neatly among the supernatural thrillers of its time, the production itself seems to have left behind an imprint that cast and crew prefer not to revisit. Interviews that mention the film tend to be terse, with comments carefully phrased and quickly concluded. Accounts from individuals connected to the shoot suggest a turbulent environment. The script reportedly underwent frequent revisions, sometimes mere moments before cameras rolled, leaving actors scrambling to adjust. Disagreements between creative departments added tension, and long night shoots imbued the set with a palpable sense of fatigue. Some participants have hinted that the material began to weigh heavily on morale, though none expanded on the specifics. Efforts to gather archival material have yielded remarkably little. Authentic set photography is scarce, promotional content limited, and retrospective attempts have been quietly declined by many who were present during filming. The gaps in documentation are unusual for a mid-80 seconds horror entry, leading to questions that remain unanswered. Today, Force of Darkness stands as a work overshadowed by its own unspoken history, a film whose muted legacy hints at experiences its makers have chosen not to share. Fact 5. Bloodbeat 1983. Few horror films have cultivated an aura of confusion and emotional intensity quite like Bloodbeat. Its bizarre mixture of psychic phenomena, family tension, and spectral samurai imagery continues to fascinate viewers. Yet, those involved in making it approach the subject with notable hesitation. Rare interviews with cast members often result in brief, fragmented recollections, as if the production sits behind a fog they're reluctant to walk back into. According to scattered accounts, the shoot was fraught with challenges. Communication barriers between the French director and his largely American cast reportedly led to misunderstandings, while the film's surreal concept left many uncertain about the tone they were meant to convey. Equipment setbacks, unpredictable scheduling, and emotionally charged scenes seem to wear down the cast and crew over time. Strikingly, almost no production materials survive, genuine behind-the-scenes photos have never surfaced, and promotional documents are minimal. Researchers attempting to chronicle its creation often find themselves retracing the same vague hints and partial stories, never arriving at a complete picture. All of this gives Bloodbeat an uncanny place in horror history, a film defined not just by its dreamlike imagery, but by the collective reluctance of its creators to speak about the strange, burdensome process that brought it into existence. Fact 6. The Being 1983. The Being sits in a curious place within early 1980 seconds. Creature features remembered for its outlandish monster, yet enveloped by a silence that suggests the production was far less entertaining than the final cut implies. Despite the involvement of well-known actors, discussions about the film are sparse, with most participants offering little more than brief acknowledgments or evasive comments. Insights gathered from those loosely connected to the project paint a picture of a shoot hampered by limitations. Budget constraints reportedly stretched the crew thin, forcing long hours under difficult conditions. Equipment issues and rushed scheduling contributed to an atmosphere of fatigue, and some crew members allegedly walked off set before filming wrapped. The isolated Idaho locations only heightened the sense of strain, turning even routine scenes into taxing efforts. Director Jackie Kong has addressed her broader filmmaking experiences over the years, yet has spoken surprisingly little about this particular project. The near-total lack of behind-the-scenes photography is equally unusual for a creature-heavy film evidence that would typically be prized by genre fans and archivists. The silence, combined with fragmented recollections, has left the being cloaked in a quiet mystery. It stands as a testament to the emotional toll that low-budget productions can take, a film whose legacy is shaped as much by what isn't said as by what appears on screen. Fact 7. The Dungeon Master, 1984. The Dungeon Master was designed as a bold anthology experiment. 7 directors, 7 distinct visions, 1 overarching narrative, yet the final product is overshadowed by how little its creators wish to say about it. Though the film has developed a cult following over the years, the people behind it seem reluctant to revisit the chaos that shaped its production. Cast interviews that touch on the film typically reveal uncertainty. Performers describe shifting tones, abrupt stylistic changes, and a sense of being pulled between competing creative directions. Crew members have described the experience as fragmented, with each segment operating like a separate world, creating communication hurdles and inconsistencies that proved difficult to merge into a cohesive whole. Retrospective efforts have faltered repeatedly. Invitations to participate in commentary tracks or anniversary discussions have often gone unanswered, and the limited behind-the-scenes material suggests that documentation may not have been prioritized or that the team had little interest in revisiting the process. Though beloved for its eccentricity, The Dungeon Master carries an unmistakable sense of creative exhaustion. It stands today as a film whose wild ambition is matched only by the silence of those who endured its tumultuous production. Fact 8. The Psychopath, 1973. The Psychopath occupies a strange, foggy space in horror history, a film that clearly exists, yet seems to have shed nearly all traces of the people who made it. Those who attempt to speak with cast or crew find themselves facing polite refusals, vague recollections, or, in some cases, outright discomfort. It is rare to encounter a production so thoroughly abandoned by its own participants. Stories that linger around the shoot point to a production riddled with tension. Conflicting creative visions reportedly led to disputes, and scenes were said to be reshaped or discarded with little notice. Crew members departed abruptly, leaving the remaining team to improvise and salvage continuity on the fly. The tone of the film, disjointed, uneasy, and oddly detached, mirrors the instability that reportedly defined its creation. What makes the film especially enigmatic is the complete lack of archival material. There are no verified behind-the-scenes photos, no production notes, no interviews from its release period. Even basic promotional materials appear to have vanished, leaving researchers with little more than the finished film to analyze. In the end, The Psychopath feels like a cinematic trace, the remnant of a project that its own creators quietly stepped away from, leaving only a faint outline of what might have happened behind the scenes. Fact 9. The Dark, 1979. The Dark stands as one of the most disorienting productions of its era, not simply because of its abrupt mid-production shift in genre, but because of the lingering silence from those involved. What began as a straightforward supernatural horror unexpectedly morphed into a sci-fi creature story, a transformation that left cast and crew scrambling to make sense of the film they were suddenly shooting. Actors who have been approached about the project generally answer with careful, measured remarks. Some admit that the changes caught them off guard, while others avoid the subject altogether. Informal accounts from crew members describe nights filled with frantic rewrites, last-minute effects adjustments, and a general atmosphere of unpredictability. The shift in direction created confusion that permeated the entire set. Perhaps most telling is the absence of substantial documentation. Production files are sparse, behind-the-scenes photography almost non-existent, and retrospective interviews nearly impossible to secure. Even collectors and restoration teams who sought to piece together the film's history encountered an unusual reluctance from those who participated. These gaps have left The Dark with a fractured legacy, a film remembered as much for its troubled creation and the silence surrounding it as for its unconventional narrative. Fact 10. The Child, 1977. The Child carries with it an aura of disquiet that extends well beyond the film itself. Researchers attempting to piece together its history quickly encounter a wall of silence. Cast members often respond with vague, fragmented memories, while others insist they recall almost nothing about the experience. A few have admitted, somewhat uneasily, that they'd rather not revisit those days at all. Local accounts from the areas where the film was shot paint a picture of a production struggling to stay cohesive. Schedules reportedly changed abruptly, scenes were reshuffled without warning, and equipment malfunctions forced long delays. The rural setting, isolated, quiet, and unsettling in its own way, reportedly amplified tensions on set. People described it as a shoot where everyone felt slightly on edge, though no one could point to a single cause. The lack of documentation makes understanding the film's creation even more difficult. No verified production stills are known to exist, and promotional materials from the time are minimal. In their place is a patchwork of half-remembered anecdotes and speculation, none of which form a complete picture. What remains is a film that feels oddly disconnected from its own making, a work whose creation flickers like a dim memory even to the people who were there. Fact 11. The Unseen, 1980. Few films have lived up to their titles as completely as The Unseen. Not only does the movie deal with hidden terrors, but the story behind its creation is shrouded in a near-complete lack of testimony. Actors seldom discuss it, and when they do, their recollections are tentative, drifting, as though they're recalling something distant and uncomfortable. Requests for commentary or retrospectives have consistently been declined. Rumors from those who passed through the production describe a process marked by uncertainty. The script was said to undergo constant revisions, leaving actors unsure of their characters' motivations from day to day. Some recalled the shooting locations feeling unusually oppressive, not for supernatural reasons, but because the environment itself seemed to grind down morale. Crew members described communication breakdowns and growing frustration as the shoot progressed. Most puzzling is the absence of visual documentation. Unlike many horror films of the era, The Unseen appears to have left behind almost nothing beyond its finished cut. No candid photography, no behind-the-scenes footage, no interviews from the time of filming. The effect is that the movie seems suspended in isolation, as though it emerged from nowhere. Its legacy is defined less by what viewers see on screen and more by what no one has been willing to reveal. Fact 12. The Outing, 1987. The Outing is one of those horror films whose production seems to dissolve the moment you try to examine it. Cast members rarely provide more than a brief acknowledgement of their involvement, and attempts to secure deeper interviews often result in polite but unmistakable refusals. Even during its original release, marketing surrounding the film felt thin and strangely impersonal, offering no hint of what happened behind the camera. Accounts from individuals connected to the shoot suggest that the set was fraught with tension. Disputes between producers reportedly sparked abrupt changes in direction, forcing the cast to adapt to new pages and shifting tones with little warning. Crew turnover was unusually high, adding to an atmosphere already marked by stress and instability. One unverified story speaks of an incident during filming that left the team shaken, though no one has ever clarified what exactly occurred. The museum location, central to the film's story, contributed to an uncanny mood during late-night shoots. Crew members later hinted that the space felt oppressive after hours, though none offered details. Strangely, there is no credited still photographer, which may explain the near-total absence of authentic behind-the-scenes images. As a result, The Outing feels like a film whose outward simplicity masks a production fraught with complications and whose silence from cast and crew only deepens its eerie legacy. Fact 13. Don't Open the Door, 1975. Don't Open the Door occupies a peculiar position in horror history, a film that survived, yet seems to have left almost no trace of how it came to be. Those who worked on it rarely speak about the production, and many have admitted in interviews when they speak at all that their memories of the shoot are faint or muddled. Others cut off the topic altogether, leaving researchers with little more than hints and contradictions. Local accounts from the Texas town where filming occurred suggest a tense atmosphere. Production reportedly stopped abruptly on several occasions, though no official explanation was ever recorded. Some crew members have described the director as increasingly withdrawn, communicating less as filming progressed. These murky recollections align with the film's fragmented and uneasy tone. The absence of proper documentation only deepens the mystery. No set photographs have surfaced, promotional material is minimal, and there is no surviving behind-the-scenes commentary. It is as though the film was pieced together quietly, without the usual trail left by most productions of its time. In the end, Don't Open the Door feels like a project swallowed by its own silence, a film whose creation evaporated into thin air, leaving only the final reel and unanswered questions behind. Fact 14. Dark Night of the Scarecrow 1981. Despite being celebrated as a standout made-for-TV horror film, Dark Night of the Scarecrow is surrounded by an unusual avoidance from those who created it. Over the years, actors and crew members have shared remarkably little about the filming process. Their remarks tend to be brief, cautious, and devoid of detail, as if pulling back a curtain they'd rather leave closed. Accounts connected to the production describe a set that was far from easy. The rural shooting locations were demanding, with long hours under harsh weather conditions. Some involved recall feeling unsettled during scenes involving the Scarecrow prop, a discomfort they never quite explained. Night shoots reportedly heightened the tension, with several individuals choosing not to linger on set after wrapping. Archival material is conspicuously minimal. There are almost no candid behind-the-scenes images, and retrospective features have been sparse due to declined invitations and unreturned requests for commentary. For a film so fondly remembered, the silence from its makers is striking. This reluctance has given Dark Night of the Scarecrow an aura of quiet dread, a film whose shadow stretches beyond its story into the memories of those who helped bring it to life. Fact 15. The Survivor 1981. The Survivor remains one of the most enigmatic productions in Australian horror, not because of its story, but because of the inexplicable silence surrounding its creation. Cast members asked about their involvement consistently offer restrained, almost minimal responses, as though the experience is something they prefer to leave unexamined. Their interviews from the era show a pattern: short replies, uncomfortable pauses, and quick changes of topic. Behind the scenes, whispers point to a troubled shoot marked by disagreements, schedule disruptions, and an atmosphere that grew heavier as production went on. Some crew members later remarked that the energy on set felt strange, as if people were working through an unseen tension they couldn't quite name. Night shoots were particularly draining, contributing to an overall sense of unease that lingers even in the fragments of testimony that survive. Curiously, very little documentation remains. Production stills are virtually non-existent, and promotional materials rely solely on staged imagery rather than authentic set photography. Even James Herbert, the author of the novel, distanced himself early, making it clear he had no desire to discuss the adaptation. All these pieces form a peculiar picture, a completed film overshadowed by silence, constructed by people who seemed eager to walk away and leave its story both on-screen and off untouched. Bonus film Deathbed. The Bed That Eats 1977. Deathbed. The Bed That Eats occupies an almost mythic position in underground horror, not because of its bizarre premise, but because of the vast emptiness surrounding its creation. Very few films inspire so much speculation simply due to the absence of answers, and in this case, the silence from its creators has become part of its lore. When those involved are approached today, their comments are brief, hesitant, or delivered with a sense of amused discomfort, as though the memory is distant and strangely fragile. George Barry, the film's elusive writer-director, remains the most enigmatic piece of the puzzle. When rediscovered decades after completing the film, he acknowledged its existence with quiet humility, but offered little clarity on how the production actually unfolded. His remarks hint at solitude, improvisation, and long stretches of uncertain motivation, but nothing substantial enough to illuminate the full process. The actors, too, are wrapped in mystery. Some cannot be located at all, their careers having drifted far from the public eye, while others offer only scattered recollections. Several have described the shoot as unusual or strange, without expanding on what gave it that energy. Their reluctance only reinforces the sense that the film was shaped in an atmosphere both isolating and emotionally taxing. Then there is the complete absence of documentation. No verified set photos, no detailed production notes, no promotional campaign. For years, the film circulated in near mythical form, poorly duplicated and traded among collectors who often assumed the original creator had vanished. Today, Deathbed feels like something that wasn't filmed so much as conjured a strange artifact whose origin seems deliberately obscured, whether by circumstance or by choice. You've just walked through a set of films whose histories are locked behind doors no one seems willing to open. Their creators stepped back, their stories were buried, and the silence they left behind has become the most chilling part of all. If you know another film wrapped in rumors, missing records, or unspoken memories, share it in the comments. And if you want to keep uncovering the secrets the horror world tries to forget, subscribe. There are more shadows waiting.